I've heard so many people complaining about how bad the new Eternal Frost arrows are, and I'll be honest, there are ways I think that the devs can and should improve magical infused weapons, but matched with a good ranger or assassin build, the Eternal arrows can be incredibly OP. Which is why today I'm going to be showing you a god tier Frost Archer build, which can still hold its own in close combat as well. And it all revolves around the use of Eternal arrows. Of course, you can use other arrows such as iron arrows if you wish to deal out extra damage, but I'd rather save them for the bosses. Now, the Eternal arrow only does 4 ice-based damage per shot, which is nothing compared to the 21 damage an iron arrow can do. However, the upside is that the Eternal arrows consume mana rather than ammunition. So in theory, with enough mana regen, you'll never run out of arrows, saving you time collecting resources and time crafting. And better yet, with the right build, you'll be killing most non-bosses in a couple of shots. So let's look at these skill points. Now, we do have all 114 points available. If you don't, you may want to doctor this build slightly. For example, we've started off with the merciless attack and going all the way through to get backstab damage. This is the important one, but we do rely on daggers occasionally, and if you're toe-to-toe against a melee enemy, the merciless attack can be a great bonus to your damage, which is why I've taken these 3 skill points. But you could avoid that if you're in the earlier levels. The first branch of the tree, we have the assassin tree. The most important ones here are obviously all the dexterity nodes. We've maxed them all out except for this one, I do believe. And also the blessed arrows. So if you hit a critical hit with a bow, you're going to regenerate 20 mana. Along with that, we've also gone with the Vitality Surge, so we get an extra 5 stamina every time we get a critical hit. And obviously, we're going to try and optimize our critical hit opportunities as much as possible. We then have these 2, which are wasted points, and then we've gone with Graceful Stride to increase our dexterity by 3, so 15% extra damage. On the Ranger tree, we've pretty much gone for everything that will increase our damage as a Ranger. And then we've gone with Ranger. That gives us a huge buff to everything. Also really important is with multi-shot, because multi-shot allows you to fire a spread of arrows. You have a 20% chance of doing that. And this may cost additional arrows if you're using normal arrows, but because we're using frost arrows, Eternal arrows, it doesn't cost anything. I don't think it even costs mana, but I might be mistaken there. We also have a multi-shot spread to follow up with, allowing us for additional projectiles, and it just means that we're able to get extra damage out in a really short frame of time. Next, we have the Beastmaster tree. This one, we have taken the poison resistance skills, but really, if you're going to get poisoned, you're still going to need to just use clean bandages to instantly remove that poison damage. We've gone also with Slice and Dice and the Dagger Master. The reason for that is that we get increased damage with daggers, which we'll occasionally rely on. And then we also have the Dexterity point here. You can go with this Endurance point, but if you want to have extra points elsewhere, you can remove that one. We don't tend to rely on as much stamina as you may think a Ranger would, because we tend to use the short bow more often than not, and that doesn't consume stamina. In the Survivor tree, we've gone all the way through. I have grabbed the double jump. I find this is the best way to avoid danger, and also helps with getting behind enemies unless you're rolling. And of course, we do want the extra backstab damage, which you can see we've grabbed here. We also have good metabolism to increase the orbs bonus. and of course the swift shot sustenance so that we get those stamina orbs. On top of this, we have rebound to increase stamina regen. Sweet tooth, you don't really need it, but it can be beneficial. But more importantly, what I wanted was the dexterity and also the dessert stomach. I don't see many people choosing to go with the dessert stomach, but I think it's a no-brainer. Having an extra food slot allows you one extra food source, and that comes with its own buffs. So for example, if you were to take fried vegetables, that's an extra 25% damage to a ranger. Extra stamina, if you feel you need it, you can go with your spiced tea. There are so many good choices by having a 4th slot available. And then finally, obviously we've already mentioned the merciless tree. You should have 3 points left over if you've followed exactly this. And we've gone with the intelligence and then the parry to gain 20 mana every time we do a successful parry. It's really beneficial to use parries, but really, with the mana regen and the critical hits, you don't really need this, and these could be better used elsewhere. But what I'd like to try and pursue is to get to battle heal, because getting an extra 5% of your maximum health when dealing critical damage with your daggers can be really beneficial at giving you extra survivability, which is why we've gone down this route. With the skill points out of the way, we need to talk about consumables. First, let's talk about food. Now with 4 slots, I've opted for meat wraps. This gives us a +5 to constitution, which provides us with a bit more health to give us some survivability in case we do get cornered. Unfortunately, the +1 to intelligence doesn't help with the ice damage from the arrows or the magic modifiers on our weapons that we're going to be using. But the wraps are the best food item in the game currently for health, so that's why we've gone with it. Now our next priority for the ranger is obviously going to be damage, so we're looking at getting our dexterity up. So for that, we're going to be using the stir-fried vegetables. Now the 5+ to dexterity means we're actually going to be doing an extra 25% damage with daggers and bows, so it's definitely worth taking over anything else that's available at the moment. Our third food option is the fruit bowl, as the health regen can really help with such a squishy character. The 3+ to stamina recharge is also really nice, although if you're more interested in getting more stamina for your character, you may be better going with a sweet and making use of the sweet tooth perk. However, as we're not that reliant on stamina, given that you'll mainly be using the short bow when stamina matters, it's negotiable. The 4th food slot though is going to be spiced tea, which does boost our pool of stamina by 50. However, if you've gone with the sweets in place of the fruit bowl, you could actually go with chamomile tea for the 4+ health regen and the 20 stamina. And of course, if you're going to a hollow haul, you'll probably want to swap out the tea for an ectoplasm soup, increasing your damage against hollows and also providing you with that very much valuable life leech despite the loss to your maximum health pool. Now with food out of the way, we still have other consumables to consider, namely elixir. Elixir is going to give you the 30% damage multiplier, and the only side effect is -1 minute to our time in the shroud, so really it's a no-brainer. Depending on how good you are at hitting headshots, you may want to take some mana potions, but if you're playing ranger, you really want to be getting critical hits regularly to proc the blessed arrows. Moving on, let's talk armor. As this build is mana based, I've gone with the Elder Chest for 96 more mana, but to be honest, you may well be fine without this. I've also gone with Radiant Paladin trousers for the passive +2 health regen, but there'll no doubt be other armors that might be worth swapping it out for. As for the rest of the armor, I've gone with the Eagle Eye set. The head offers a massive 15% bonus to critical strike, which means proccing more blessed arrows, and the 13% critical hit damage is a nice boost to our damage output. We also get a plus 12% damage, range damage from the gloves, and 6% range damage against ranged foes from that as well. We then have the boots. Now these are negotiable dependent on how much stamina you use. As for the rings, we have a ring of rapacity boosting our mana regen and a ring of greater stamina, offering us even more stamina regen and stamina to keep us on our toes. Of course, none of this build works without the right tools for the job though, which is why we're now going to be talking about weapons. Now I run with 3 weapons. The first is the Wolf's Snarl longbow, which has great damage alongside a bonus to critical hit chance and critical hit damage, which makes it great for taking out a lot of health quickly and engaging from afar. This does use stamina though to fire, so you do have to be careful not to exhaust yourself, and generally speaking I only use these from far if I'm engaging or if I'm trying to take out a boss, just for that extra damage. But speaking of stamina consumption from longbows, this is where our next weapon comes in, the short bow. The short bow is fantastic because it doesn't use stamina to fire, which means our eternal arrows are just going to be costing mana, which we're getting back from our blessed arrows anyway. And my favorite short bow at the moment is the ornate wood bow, which gives a 60% buff to backstab damage on top of critical hit damage and critical chance. You'll want to be getting close to your enemies, and as they attack you're going to roll around them and then shoot them from behind to do large amounts of damage really quickly. Now the only exception to this for me is if you're doing the hollow halls. If you're doing the hollow halls, you want to be using the silver short bow, as it's got the bonus to, I think, hollows. I think it's sacred, right, is the name. It's fantastic for that. Then finally we do have blink daggers for emergencies. Now they come with 40% backstab damage and a chance to poison an enemy. Now, if you were more interested in pushing critical hits, you could go down the route of using shivs, as they offer 40% bonus to crits. And I think you can also go with the Baroness daggers. I think that's what they're called. If I remember rightly, they offer a 40% bonus to merciless attacks, so they're very beneficial as well, and our build is geared towards that. Now I haven't found all the weapons or armor, so if you do have a better selection, please do let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear about your builds. I also think one big improvement that the devs could make is to allow other class skills affect each other, such as points in strength improving damage for daggers. This would allow you to mix and match your skill points to your playstyle, as at the moment each playstyle favors going purely down the route of either archer, melee or magic. The same goes for magic. Let intelligence and skill buffs like Iceman or Arsonist work with the bonus stats on weapons, whether that's for bows or melee weapons. This may require magic classes being buffed again, but I feel giving us more freedom to play how we want to can only be a good thing. It really doesn't make sense to me having a magical arrow that consumes mana not be affected by magic damage buffs, but hey ho, what do I know? So there you are, guys. I hope you found this guide helpful. Let me know if it changed your mind about the eternal arrows as well, and if you did enjoy it, hit the thumbs up and let me know what guide you'd like to see on Enshrouded next. Special thanks does go to all of our amazing supporters on Patreon, most notably our Solo Clips patron, Firefless, as well as our Lunas, the Calamity, Ben and Star, and our Blood Moon of the day, which today is Papa Snoozy. Until next time, as always, ciao for now.